Welcome back to Unveiling the Covenants, where we explore the mysteries of sacred scripture and the covenant love of God the Father from the heart of the church. I'm Marcus Peter, your regular host. We're going to continue our series with an exploration of the book of Tobit, and we're going to try to extrapolate the themes of the covenant from the book of Tobit. The book of Tobit makes up a series of books called the Deuterocanonicals by Catholics and the Apocrypha by Protestants. And the reason for this is multifold. There was historically a difference in canonical use by the Jews, the Alexandrian canon versus the Jerusalem canon, during the time of Jesus. But what we know for sure is that Jesus and the apostles themselves draw from these 7 books in the Bible, the Deuterocanonicals. So what really differs between the Protestant Bible and the Catholic Bible is that in the Protestant Bible, these 7 books were removed, and they were removed by none other than Martin Luther. The exact year is a little iffy, but somewhere in the 1520s. And the reason for their removal is because they contain evidence for certain doctrines that corroborate the Catholic Church's narrative, particularly for the doctrine of purgatory, which we'll talk about a little deeper when we talk about the books of Maccabees. The book of Tobit is categorized as a kind of didactic narrative. It's a narrative that's meant to teach us something. There are some scholars who put it under a category of what's known as biblical novellas. It really is a dramatic story. And one of the key things that you're going to see come out in the book of Tobit is that there's this real struggle, if you will, between righteous living and bad things happening to good people. We call this the problem of theodicy. Why do evil things happen to good people? The book of Tobit aims to help us understand in a kind of grand narrative that just because bad things happen to us, it doesn't mean that God has withdrawn his hand from us. That there will be times where evil befalls the good. And that's neither through direct divine intervention, nor is it always through the sin of the person undergoing the suffering. Now, make no mistake about it. There are many instances where the worst sufferings that we endure are the result of mistakes we ourselves have made. They're the natural consequences of mistakes and sins that we willfully committed without owning up to, or even in the process of owning up to. It's a natural consequence. However, there are, as you are listening to this, you know this, there are many instances in our life where evils befall us through no fault of our own. And these injustices are real, and they cause us real rancor, and they cause us real resentment, and they cause us real despair. In those situations, books in Scripture, like the book of Tobit, for example, Job is another example, are ones that we can look to and learn to see divine hope and providence. So the narrative is very simply that it begins with this individual named Tobit. The events take place after the Babylonian exile. The Israelites have now returned to this new land of Israel. They're rebuilding. And Tobit is a righteous man. He's striving to be righteous. There's this short narrative of how he doesn't mind getting himself liturgically unclean to bury a fellow Israelite, lest the body of that Israelite be trampled underfoot or be left for the animals to devour. In the process of caring for this, he becomes liturgically unclean, and so he sleeps outside of his house. And in sleeping outside of his house overnight, you're going to see this narrative. It's going to be a little confusing, but birds' droppings fall into his eyes, and in the morning when he wakes up, he rubs them into his eyes and he turns blind. Now, you might be looking at me thinking, okay, that's a very weird, oddly specific narrative. What does that have to do with anything? Well, think about this. He just did something really, truly noble and sacrificial for this fellow Israelite whom he really didn't truly know. He wasn't intimately acquainted with him. And yet Tobit does this because it's the right thing to do. And then evil befalls him. And as you're listening to this, you might even know events where that has happened in your life. And the fact of the matter is, when these things happen, it is so easy to ask God, where are you in this process? It feels like you don't care. And really, truly, it really does feel like he doesn't care. It feels like we've fallen out of the hand of divine providence and we have to work this out on our own. And yet what happens with Tobit then is this long, construed narrative of God intervening in indirect and direct ways. Cutting a long story short, his son Tobias has to go on an excursion to reclaim a debt that's owed to him, that's owed to Tobit. And in the process of doing so, he winds up at the house of Raguel, his uncle, and he winds up marrying his cousin, Sarah, who, and again, this is in the narrative, Sarah has been betrothed to multiple husbands by then, but a demon, he is identified in scripture here. His name is Asmodeus or Asmodeus. And as Asmodeus seems to plague Sarah to prevent her from consummating her marital bond with every husband she has. Every husband dies before he and Sarah are allowed to consummate this relationship. And this becomes a problem. It's deemed as an evil curse upon the house of Raguel. And Sarah herself is distraught. She's in true despair. Well, throughout Tobias's journey, God sends a helper who will eventually be identified as the angel Raphael, the healing of God. And so what does he do? Well, he brings about true healing. He brings about the healing of God first to Tobias's new bride, Sarah, by ensuring that in the process of them getting married, and he offers Tobias a certain formula for incense. I don't want to give you details, but I urge you, read the book and you'll find out. It's a very short book. He gives him incense of a certain formula, and this incense offered in worship of God casts away Asmodeus and his influence upon Sarah. And so Tobias is given to Sarah as true husband. They become true bridegroom and true bride. One of the verses that really sticks out in this particular part of the narrative is that Tobias is told, God has ordained Sarah for you to be your bride since the beginning of time. And we find this directly in sacred scripture. And that's a truly beautiful thing for us to understand. Very often, a lot of us question about God's will in our life. Am I really living out God's will? Well, in as much as we can in our fallen nature, we are never going to have complete, concrete evidence that we are doing God's will exactly. So what do we rely on? Well, we rely on, number one, the faith of divine revelation that Christ has handed down to us. Number two, we also rely on the fact that Christ leads us today by the gift of the Holy Spirit. And so as we continue to pray and develop an intimacy with God, what we learn to do is we learn to recognize His voice and His guidance. We learn to move as He wants us to move. We learn to pull back as He wants us to pull back. And we learn to walk as He wants us to walk. And as we keep doing so day by day, Psalm 119 verse 105 tells us, your word is a light unto my feet and a lamp unto my path. Well, what does that tell us? Well, it simply tells us this, that as we walk, Christ illuminates the next step. As we walk, Christ illuminates the next step. As we walk, Christ illuminates the next step. And that's all we have to trust, that each day as we wake up, we can turn to our Lord and say, Lord, this day belongs to you. This life belongs to you. And grant me sufficient grace to go through this day. And to this end, I greatly want to encourage the gift and grace of daily Mass. I greatly want to encourage the gift and grace of daily prayer. If you don't have a habit of it, start small. But please start running to the Lord, to these channels of grace. Why? Not because God wants to be let into our daily life because He's nosy that way. No. Because He is Father who truly knows what's best for us, and He wants to endow us not only with the graces necessary to get through the day well, He also wants to imbue us with the capacity, the interior movement of our soul to be able to make the right decisions, to be able to make the correct ones morally, but also to be able to make the ones that will glorify Him. Why? Because it's in glorifying Him and in union with Him that we find truest and utmost happiness. And that's exactly what we see happening with Tobias here. Tobit has taught his son Tobias how to listen to the voice of the Lord, how to seek the hand of the Lord. And so what does the Lord do? He intervenes. Now granted, not all of us will be visited by an archangel of the Lord. Let's face that. Raphael is indeed an archangel, and his name literally means the healing of Elohim, the healing of God, the Rapha. And that's exactly what he does. But just because we're not physically visited by archangels, it doesn't mean that these archangels are not themselves metaphysically ministering to us. In fact, I go so far as to put this to you, that especially when we don't see the hand of God working, that's when he's working most powerfully. Our Lord, our Father, delights in hiding behind the curtain. He delights in working in anonymity. He delights in working through the grace of coincidence. Why? Because he trusts us, his children, with the capacity to peel back the veil every so often and to behold him and to behold his hand. He wants us to trust that he is a father who's always working. We're not a church that's institutional because we're corporate. No. We are a church that's institutional because we're family. And family is an institution, the prime institution, initiated by God for the sake of bringing us, his created children, into his covenant family for eternity. And that's why, tough as it is for a lot of us to swallow, not everyone belongs to the covenant family of God. Covenant is a decision. Not everyone is a child of God. And if that offends you emotionally, well, it's the truth. It's factually the truth. To be a child of God the Father in his covenant family in its truest sense, as the Catechism teaches us, is to be inducted into the covenant family of God by means of baptism and acceptance of the Lordship of Jesus Christ and living under the family rule of God the Father. The Catholic faith in this regard presents itself as both extremely difficult and yet infinitely rewarding. Why? Because family is challenging. And God doesn't want to challenge us because he wants us to suffer. Family is challenging because that challenge is what's best for us. There's not a man on the planet that gave his life to his bride on his wedding day and thought, gosh, from now on, we will live our happily ever after. Everything will be sunshines and rainbows. There's not a man on the planet who thought that. And this is why. Disney did us the great injustice of saying, and they lived happily ever after. There's not a wealthy person on the planet who does not have struggles, let alone average people. What is the point I'm trying to make here? When you and I enter into covenant with God, we enter into covenant knowing that we don't know what's best for us, but God does. That we don't know what's perfect for us, but God does. We don't even know the purpose of our life, but God does. And because he's Father, he has seen the end goal. He has seen the perfection of the plan. He has seen where we are, where we come from, and most of all, where he wants us to be. And where he wants us to be is true happiness. And so he requires of us, he calls of us to engage the fullness of our intellect, the fullness of our will in engaging that which he has called us to do. He will speak to us and he'll guide us in ordinary and extraordinary circumstances. He'll guide us and protect us through physical and metaphysical means of doing so. He will provide for us not just through financial means, but also through familial means, not just through providential material means, but also through immaterial means. Why? Because he's a father who meets every single need of his children. We need only but ask and trust. And he will continue to mold us into his image with each passing day. And that's why sufferings allow us to become more like him. Because sufferings, when properly endured, make us selfless. Sufferings, when improperly endured, make us bitter. And therein lies the problem. When we try to go sufferings ourselves, the temptation is twofold. To, number one, pat ourselves on the back and say, I got through that of my own power. I didn't see God there. I didn't feel God there, so clearly he wasn't there. Number two, why wasn't he there? And then that develops and engenders a certain embitterment inside our hearts. And that embitterment grows, and it becomes a hardness of heart that draws the soul away from God. Now, you might be listening to this thinking, well, that's not me. Well, I urge you to take a good look at your hearts as I take a good look at mine. This is all of us. At some point, Tobit wants to give in to despair. He just chooses not to because he wants to hold on to his faith even more. If faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the substance of things unseen, then faith is what we hold on to when we know precisely that there's nothing else left to hold on to. Faith is what we cling to in the Word of God when we know that everything else seems to be working against us. Faith is what we hope for because faith becomes that hope. Faith is that certitude, and this faith has been poured into our hearts by the gift of our Father, who has endowed upon us and within us the gift of His Holy Spirit. He gives His love to us so that we can hold on to this faith. Why? Because faith is an assent to truth that God has given us. He is Father. He will never abandon us. And not just even when it's bad. No. I say especially when it's bad. Especially when things are hopeless. Especially when things seem darkest. Our Father holds on to us even harder. Not only does He never give up on us, our Father is actively fighting for us. And we need to learn to be confident children who walk in that faith. Why? Let's take a look at our own marriages. As I mentioned earlier, there's not a man on the planet that thought, the day I profess my vows, my life is going to be completely perfect. No, the day I professed my vows was the day I said, I will undertake this cross with you, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, till death do us part. And every day that cross takes on a whole new meaning. For a lot of us, the day by day is financial and material. But there's also the reality of the emotional toil. There's also the reality of the physical toil. And in all of this, we understand that that's the source of happiness. Marriage is meant to make me selfless. Marriage, the sole purpose of marriage as a vocation, get this clear, my dear brothers and sisters, is meant to make me a saint. And it's meant for me to help my bride become a saint. There's no way around it. I did not marry her so that I wouldn't be lonely anymore. Why? Because married people complain about loneliness. Loneliness is a natural fallen human state. It's an inevitable part of being a fallen human person. And you might be asking, well, no, I don't want that. You can blame Adam and Eve for that to a degree. The reason for our interior loneliness is that our souls deep within are crying out for union with the God who made us. But it's so much easier to cling to the temporal. Why? Because money is satisfying. Pleasure is pleasurable. Honor lifts us up. And power gives us the illusion of being untouchable. And in the process, it is easy to not look at one's loneliness. And there are many people who do this. Many people. We constantly seek out these exterior things to not have to take a good, forceful look at our interior lives and ask, what are the areas of my life that's breeding bitterness and toxicity? How am I wrong here? And it's disgusting because what it does is it rots our souls from within. We can only balm these wounds of the soul for so long before they start festering from within. So not only do we literally need to seek the Raphael, the healing of God, we need to seek the providence of our Lord. We need to turn back as children of a Father to trust that as a Father, He knows what's best for us. As a Father, He knows what's good for us. And as a Father, He wants what is truly wonderful for us, especially when you and I don't see it. And that's the lesson that we're going to learn from the book of Tobit. As Tobias goes through his journey, he is constantly yielding his will to what the Lord wants. His desire for Sarah might have a natural component, but you're also going to see one of the most beautiful prayers of a married couple found in the book of Tobit. It's prayed by Tobias and Sarah by their bedside on their wedding night. And if I may be so bold as to share this, after my bride and I were married sacramentally and we had our reception, as we returned to our room to retire for the night, the first thing we did before we went to bed, the first thing we did was we got down on our knees and we turned to the book of Tobit and we prayed that prayer together as a married couple to wind down the day and to make sure that this is how we're going to lead the rest of our life. I urge you, as a married couple, kneel beside your bed and pray that prayer. Pray that prayer because what it teaches us, especially as men, is to realize that this marital vocation is sacramental and is meant for sainthood. It teaches us to not view our brides as objects for desire, but as persons to grow alongside with. It teaches us to view our marriage as the instrument through which God is going to make us like Him. And because of that, it teaches us to remember that in all things, from the moment I open my eyes at the beginning of the day to the moment I close my eyes, God ought to be the center of our household, of our marriage, and of our family. So, as I share all this with you, you're going to learn a couple of things about the book of Tobit. Narratively, it's going to read slightly differently than the rest of the books if you pick that up, and it's because scholars posit that it was probably written in Aramaic first and then translated into Hebrew. Now, what does this have to do with anything? Well, amongst other things, what it tells us is that these stories were used in the liturgy and transmitted to different subsets of the Jewish community. And as they were speaking Aramaic, they wrote it down in Aramaic. Now, why does that matter to us? This narrative taught the entire Jewish community. That's the significance. This narrative was didactic, literally a teaching narrative for the entire Jewish community. This is not for some of us. Just because it was written for the Jewish community about 5,000 years ago, or just under that, it doesn't mean that it's not pertinent for us today. This is truly the inspired word of God. And so the book of Tobit teaches us that as we go through Tobit's ordeals, we are going to share with him the reality that we suffer with him. For every good thing that we do and bad things happen to us, and we might wonder what on earth is going on, Tobit realizes that pain with us. We're going to look at Sarah's plight and her prayer to God and her suffering through all of this, because as she desires marriage as a vocation, so many young women out there, for one reason or another, are not finding the fulfillment of that vocation. And it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking for multiple reasons, don't get me wrong. One of the main reasons is that a lot of men are not rising up to undertake the challenge necessary to be truly virtuous men, that they may lead truly virtuous women in truly virtuous marriages. Sarah's cry of the heart is the cry of every virtuous young woman today who does not want to cave to the societal idiocies of the present liberal narrative. If anything, Sarah's plight cries out to the heart of God as a daughter who wants nothing more than to live out the holy vocation of marriage and the family that God has imbued upon their soul. This is the cry of every daughter, every young woman who desires to be bride and mother. As you see Tobias's preparation for the journey, see yourself in the process of preparing for the sojourn that is this valley of tears, this world. We are on Exodus, but our Exodus now is from this earth into the heavenly Jerusalem. As you see Tobias's journey to Media, his marriage and the healing of Sarah, see God's hand guiding and healing every facet of our life. In fact, I want to encourage some level of gratefulness, that we start recognizing how God has served every one of our needs, despite the fact that we don't recognize it. As we see Raphael healing and revealing his identity as an archangel, healing Tobit's eyes, see God bringing to a completion all the plans that he has for you and your family. The book of Tobit is going to be a reminder that this is your life. And if God is covenantal Father, He has covenanted Himself to you. The theme of the covenant just jumps out and screams in the book of Tobit. God is faithful, and He will never waver in faithfulness, even when we do, especially when we don't think that He's being faithful to us. I want to speak right now to your hearts for the pains that you might be going through. That thing that you're waiting for accomplishment that has not happened yet and you've been waiting for a long time. Your financial needs that seem to be remedying themselves, albeit slowly. The relationships that seem to be strayed, frayed, or broken in your families. I want to speak to all of this and assure you that the same Raphael that ministered to Tobias and to Tobit is ministering to you now. The same archangel has been placed as a minister of healing for you and your family and your household and your marriage. I want to speak directly into marriages that are suffering. Read the book of Tobit as a couple. See in it the struggles that you have as a couple. And then pray for divine healing as a couple. Fight through the pride of hurts of the past to go beyond that, to see the love that God has instilled in your heart for the infinite value of heaven that He calls you to through your marriage. Enjoy reading the book of Tobit. Until next time, God bless you and keep you always. I'm Marcus Peter.